Hey everybody, let's talk Portuguese. Today we're going to talk about all of the things that are not quite right that I've had in my videos throughout the years. Yes, you heard that correctly. I am going to be talking about some of the things that have been flagrantly wrong in my videos in the past about Portuguese, but I wanted to take this as an opportunity to take a look back on the videos that I've made about Portuguese on my channel. If you've been following me for quite some time, or you haven't, but you have binge watched all of my videos, you will know that I started making videos about the Portuguese language in 2016. Before that, I was making more videos about things like food and cultural stuff and just whatever would pop into my head. But in 2016, the focus of this channel became the Portuguese language. That was not an accident, and I wanted to get into some of the reasons why I dedicate so much time and energy into studying Portuguese and into making videos like this on this channel. That got its start in 2016 when I took the time to really dig into the lexical differences between Portugal and Brazil. Which term was more common in which place was an especially relevant question for me at that time because, as you all should know by now, I spent several years living in Lisbon, which is where I learned Portuguese, and therefore I do speak European Portuguese. But when I moved to Barcelona, my social group became mostly Brazilians, and although I do happen to speak more Portuguese in my day-to-day than I do Spanish or Catalan because of my social circle in this city, the people who I'm speaking with are generally Brazilians. So on top of occasionally having interferences from Spanish or Catalan, I also have Brazilian Portuguese to work with as well. At the time that I had started that series in 2016, I had felt like my Portuguese was being unduly influenced by Brazilian Portuguese to an extent that it was kind of coming across to me as inauthentic or unnatural, considering that I have always spoken Portuguese from Europe. With that really came a curiosity to dig deeper into what the specific differences are and whether they really are significant. And the main thing that I discovered when I was doing this is that the overwhelming majority of sources available on the internet talking about the differences between European and Brazilian Portuguese are garbage. Truly, quite a lot of them either repeat the same words over and over and over that you see on every single one of those lists, or they get the words wrong, or they simply just don't know what they're talking about. I really found at that time that those sources were not really worth using, and I'm not especially impressed by what's available even today. But in my rush to make those videos, you will notice in them that I was speaking especially fast. Part of that is just editing, and part of that is because I was speaking at my normal pace in English, which I have since slowed down since I have gotten so much feedback about that. But inevitably in those videos, there were a few things here and there that slipped through the cracks and were not quite right. So let's take a look at those first. In episode 1, where I'm talking about words that relate to the bathroom and using it, I said that in Portugal you would puxar autocolismo. Now that isn't entirely incorrect, you can say that, but in Portugal the preferred verb to use with buttons and things of the like is carregar. So in fact we would more often be a carregar autocolismo and not a puxar autocolismo. This serves for any and all kinds of buttons in Portugal, so it makes sense when we're referring to flushing the toilet, as modern toilets pretty much all have buttons that we press to flush them. In episode 6, talking about clothes, something comes up fairly regularly, which is using calça in the singular. While saying uma calça in Brazil is not unheard of at all, in Portugal it's mostly seen as incorrect. You would use umas calças in the plural. There are some people in Portugal who have taken on the fanciful way of saying uma calça to refer to a pair of pants. One of the fashion reporters on TVI's morning segment is especially guilty of this, but in general in Portugal you should be saying umas calças, and in fact there's a good etymological reason for this. Calling a pair of pants in Portuguese has basically the same idea behind it as it does in English, because in Portuguese, the word calça refers to the thing that we're sticking our legs into. So if you only have uma calça, you've only got one half of your pair of pants. And so therefore we say umas calças because each pair of pants has two calças. Now, another term that is normally used in the plural in Portugal and can be used in the plural or singularly in Brazil is cuecas. But this one I wouldn't consider totally wrong because in quite a lot of places you will see uma cueca in Portugal. In episode 10 about transportation, one of the most controversial things that I said was in fact more controversial because of the erroneous subtitle that I included, where I mistranslated what I said about cruzar a rua being a variant that exists in Brazil, and I translated it as though it were to mean that it is more common. Now that is definitely not true. The most common way to say it in Brazil is still atravessar a rua, but cruzar a rua does exist, and you will hear it from some speakers in a perfectly normal and natural way. Similarly, freeway or freeway in Brazil mostly refers to one highway in Rio Grande do Sul. In that video, I was also not especially precise with the use of carruagem versus vagão in Portugal. For city transit like metro systems like the Metro de Lisboa or light rail systems like Metro do Porto, we have carruagens on our comboios. But for intercity or regional transportation on larger trains, we have vagões, and that is perfectly normal. We also have vagões in Portugal on comboios de mercadoria or cargo trains. And for my last video that I did in the Versus series, I want to talk a little bit about some of the pronunciation points that were just not right. In Brazil, they say exceção with no P, but in that country, the word that we say as excepcional in Portugal is in fact excepcional with a P. Perfectivo in Brazil also retains its C, just like other words that have a similar composition. And last but not least, in Brazil, fato is in fact just a fact and refers only to that, and has had pretty limited literary usage referring to a set of clothing in the manner that we use it in Portugal. That is not to say that there are not cases of using the word fato to refer to clothing in classical Brazilian literature, especially in poetry, but those cases are very few and far between, and that meaning of the word really does not enter the popular conception of it in any capacity in modern Brazil. Now that I've gotten through those early days versus videos, however, let's talk a little bit about some of the other videos that I've started to do about Portuguese since then. As you will have noticed by now, I have moved on from doing just basic videos comparing little things like lexical differences into doing research and really giving you a more in-depth look at certain things in Portuguese. That is especially true of the videos that I've done about the evolution of Portuguese as a language. And when I got to the evolution of Brazilian pronunciation, there was just one little thing that was not quite right. In that video, I erroneously stated and later corrected in the comments and description of the video that mel and meu would be homophones in Brazilian Portuguese because of the sound changes that were involved in the letter L in Brazilian Portuguese. Now, the L part is correct and holds true. There are scarcely few Brazilian speakers who would say mel with an l sound at the end, but mel and meu have different vowel aspects because Portuguese has two different ways of saying the E vowel. We have a flat E sound and we have an open E sound. So the word mel has that flat E sound, and the word meu has that E sound. Now, with that said, in most cases, insofar as I catch them or you guys leave me comments about it on the videos, I will put in corrections to the videos where necessary in the description and as a pinned comment on the video, because I am dedicated to getting the right information out in my videos. I don't want to mislead people the way that I feel that a lot of the resources that compare Brazilian and European Portuguese on the internet tend to. So with that being said, I have a couple of other videos that I wanted to talk about, which are not exactly wrong, but have some things that I need to clear up. The first one is the video that I did in my Em Bom Português series, where I talked about para fazê-lo. Now, I mostly stand by what I said in that video, but actually the placement of pronouns in Portuguese is a lot more complicated than that, and para fazê-lo is a perfectly accepted variant of that placement. So I'm actually preparing a video that will come out later this month that's going to talk all about pronoun placement in Portuguese. If you want more videos like that and you want to be the first to know about what's coming up next on my channel, support me on Patreon. The link to that is in the description of all of my videos, and on it I give you early access to the things that I'm working on next, as well as reading lists for all of the things that I'm researching for my videos, and you even have access to fun things like postcards. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about is one of the points in my video about porquê that I recently did on my channel. Now, there is some confusion out there about the usage of porquê, meaning why in English, in sentences that are not questions. I wanted to clear up this point and explain a little bit about why we write porquê the ways that we do in Portugal and Brazil, because it's in fact a little bit more coherent than you might expect. What it comes down to is where porquê means why in English, that usage is an interrogative. There are in fact different kinds of interrogatives. There are direct interrogatives, which are why questions, but there are also indirect interrogatives, which are the contexts in which we use the word why when we're not using it in questions. Given that we know that in Brazil the interrogative is a separate porquê, it logically follows that in indirect interrogative clauses, we have porquê separately. This is in fact the same grammatical logic that we have when using porquê altogether in those clauses as well in European Portuguese, because in European Portuguese, the porquê interrogative is all together. I hope that cleared that up for you, and I hope that you enjoyed this little video about some corrections of my older videos, as well as a look back on some of the things that I have done on my channel. That's all I've got for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, if you learned something or otherwise found it interesting, give me a thumbs up down below. You might think about subscribing to my channel if you're not already. I have a ton of videos about the Portuguese language that you can find in playlists directly on my channel or in the eye above. And don't forget to support me on Patreon, where you can get access to extras, including fun things like postcards personalized directly from me. That's all I've got for now, and I'll see you next time.